Hello, welcome to this AVLAND review of the Onkyo TXNR3010 AV receiver. We're going to talk to you about the features of this AV receiver, the components that go into making it, the best way of setting it up, and we're going to show you its streaming features, including its Dsd file playback.
This is the NR3010 from Onkyo. It replaces the 3009, which was last year's model. On the superficially, it doesn't really look a lot different, and inside, there's not a lot that's changed, but there's a few extra feature differences between the two models. It retains the same look. It's got the same sort of flat brushed aluminium front fascia that's now shared across the entire Onkyo range, and it's got probably the most impressive feature spec of any product at this sort of price range. It does do an awful lot. It includes 9 Hdmi inputs, and there's one of those on the front, which is also an MHL input, so you can connect something up to it, an Android phone or something like that has a MHL output, and output video and audio to it. You can see it has these different input lights on the front above each button, and the volume dial also lights up. But you can turn these off. They're sort of optional. You can turn them off and have them on or off. All the display itself you can dim as well. Behind this front flap here, you've got lots of buttons, a headphone socket. You can turn the different zones on and off. This has 9 channels of amplification, so you've got the potential there for 3 powered zones if you're not using all 9 channels in the main zone. Even if you are, you can add a power amp to it, or some other amplification to it, and have those zones powered and use 9 channels in the main room. You can set it up from the front as well, which is quite handy. You don't have to have the remote nearby. That's especially useful if it's going in a sort of custom installation environment. So you've got your front HDMI input, your USB input there as well on the front, which means you can plug an iPod into that or a USB flash drive and play music directly from that. It will play FLAC files up to 192 kilohertz, and MP3 and Windows Media Audio and WAV files.
Now we're going to show you what's inside the Onkyo TXNR3010 AV receiver, the components that make it work.
So here's inside. You can see in the middle is where all the actual amplification op amps are. This is the main video board. So this has got all the video processing, all the video switching for the HDMI. It also has the audio decoding there. You can see the DTS, Dolby Digital logos on that chip. And it's very densely populated. All surface mount components as well, to try and keep the space down. And all these bits all work together seamlessly. The firmware, it has multiple different firmwares in it that can be updated online or by USB. And Onkyo are quite proactive with providing updates, software updates. Sometimes actually out of the box, brand new products have a software update. So they're working on things even when things are in transport from the factory. That's each of the amps there, those green bits there. You can see with the little orange potentiometers on them that trim them. And there's a big copper bus bar that runs along. You can see there between the different amplification modules, all 9 of them. It has 9 actual amps. That's the copper bus bar that provides the current to each of the amplification modules. And being copper plated, enables it to be a bit better conductivity, and it's just attention to detail. You can see here it has separate transformers for the digital and analog stage, as well as the main massive power transformer that's in the middle. That's one of the things you don't get on the lower models that use the same sort of chassis. That the 1010 below this doesn't have those additional transformers, so that's one of the differences. Also, the 1010 below is only 7 channel. This is 9 channel. But pretty packed out. It's very heavy as well. It weighs 25 kilos. So yeah, it's some people might need a hand lifting it around. It's especially if you're lifting it high. The back panel is just as dense. It's got a lot of connections on it there, a lot of retro compatibility with older products as well. You have a USB input on the back, which is very useful because it's you could have a hard drive wired up to that or something like that. The Ethernet port, 8 HDMI inputs on the back, as well as 2 out, so you can have a projector or and a TV in the same room. One of them has the audio return channel, which carries the audio back from a television back down the HDMI to the amp. And then here's all your speaker terminals. Now, they've done this, the way they've done this on here, they do this across their range, is that you could have all the different things wired up to it and then selectively choose the amps when you want to use them. So you could have 9 channels as amplification in your main room and then change it to being a zone 3 as well, potentially, depending on, there is some limitations, some of them are shared, but it does have the capability of crossing over and using them for other things. Or you can have a power amp doing that amplification. Now, each of the terminals, they can take a 4mm banana plug. I'm going to show you here. From the factory, they come with these little plastic bungs you have to prise out. And there you go, you can put a banana plug in. Absolute nightmare if you were going to try and bare wire this. You can do it, but if you were going to use all those speaker terminals bare wired, it could become quite a mess. Much easier to use banana plugs and a much better connection. Although we've soldered that up, most people would just use a bare wire twisted together, and that would oxidize up, so it wouldn't be good. Here's the menus. So this is the monitor out menu for the HDMI. You can use the zone 2, the second HDMI, as a zone 2 if you want, rather than for showing the same information in the same room. So quite useful. You can have, if you've got, say, a satellite receiver plugged into this, and you want somebody to be able to watch that in another room, but you want to be able to, say, watch a film in that main zone, you could do that. Someone could share the satellite receiver, especially now you've got control apps for a lot of things on Android and iOS. You can then control the receiver, control the device you want to use from another room, and someone else can be watching something else that's in that main room. So you don't need to get a second satellite box or even a second Blu-ray player in another room. You could just have a television, and this will pipe that zone 2 to that other room. So very, very handy for custom install for multi-zones. It opens it up, and it's something you may not use initially, but further down the line you might decide you might want to use. You can also assign the audio inputs, the digital inputs, to a HDMI input there as well. This is the speaker settings. It's got a function called digital crossover, and very briefly what this allows you to do is send separate frequencies. So normally on most of these high-end AV amps you can buy amp, but Onkyo has introduced a feature where you can actually send a different frequency and have a digital crossover. In the real world, unless you can bypass the crossover that's in the actual speaker, I don't really see the point in this. But it's somebody at Onkyo has obviously thought about this and thought this would be a nice thing to do. And maybe in the future there will be speakers on the market that you can bypass the crossover network and have it digitally done inside your amplifier. So quite a novel step, but you can of course just have it normally wired up or bi-amped. Certainly if you're not using those 9 extra channels, that's what we would recommend doing. If you can bi-amp your front speakers, you will get better performance because you've then effectively got 2 amplifiers on each speaker, and although they're still sharing the same transformer, you are getting better throughput to them, and so you will be benefit when you listen to music and films as well, but the main benefit would be there for stereo music. You can select here whether you're going to use a powered zone 2, powered zone 3. It will do 11 channel playback as well, and for that you will need a power amp or active speakers. And here it's quite good. It shows you the rear panel, it shows you what's going on, because it can become quite complicated when you start wiring all these things up and then start changing the amp, and you want to make sure that you don't do it at a high volume where when you're doing this you have it turned all down. You don't want to be switching to bi-amp and things like that, and if you've got something wired up wrong, so be very careful when you're doing it, or even have it unplugged. Set it up how you want it first, then plug everything in, plug all the speakers in. Here's where you set the configuration up of the speakers. You can set them up, and the distance as well. You can just get a tape measure and measure it to where your main sitting position is, and measure the distance to each speaker. The level calibration as well. If you're not using the auto setup, the Odyssey XT32 on this, you can manually do that yourself. You can adjust equalizer settings. Shouldn't have to. Ideal world, your speakers should match your amplifier very well. You shouldn't have to equalize it, but the feature's there if you want to. This is the TX menu, where you've got various different little THX tweaks you can do, and say whether the subwoofer you're using is a THX subwoofer. This amplifier is THX Ultra 2 certified as well, and that's one of the things you get from the lower models, is that it is a THX Ultra, not the cheaper ones are only THX Select. Here's you've got different audio settings for the different modes. You can trim them depending on what's going on. You can have different, slightly different volumes. I've found in the past that DTS might be mastered slightly differently, and then there's different settings as well for them that are intrinsic to DTS and Dolby Digital. And you've got a few different settings here as well. There's a something there to adjust the theatre dimensional, and then here's where you can adjust the subwoofer level depending on whether it's Dolby Digital or DTS. Again, I found that's different. It can be different. Here's setting for Dsd DAC Direct. Now, one of the features this has got, which was advertised as being higher than the lower models, though we found that the 818 and upwards has got this, is that it will play stereo, won't do multi-channel, DSD files directly from a USB or across the network. So if you've got copied SACDs or you've mastered your own DSD recordings, this is one of the few products that you can play them back directly. Normally you have to play them back in a computer, and this will let you play them back. Quite neat if you've got quite a collection of SACDs that have been copied and you've got them stored on a server. You can then have them all in one place and play them back from this unit, so quite neat. Here's where you adjust the audio sync, so if the picture's slightly out of sync with the audio, you can adjust that. It is a problem with some satellite boxes. Some televisions also introduce quite a lot of video processing, which delays the picture, so then you need to delay the sound as well. It's quite good because it goes up to 800 milliseconds. You've got picture adjustments on here as well, and it can be ISF calibrated too. So you've got a full range of different things. Wouldn't recommend doing it. I'd recommend doing it in your display device, but it can be done inside the amplifier if you want, because there might be a few more tweaks that are in your television. Here you can set different things for different inputs. So for your television you might always want it in stereo. For your CD player you might always want it in stereo. For your Blu-ray player you'd want it normally always in some kind of multi-channel format. You can set the volume level here to relative or absolute. If it's relative, it will count down in minus dB steps, and that's the best way of doing it really. 0 dB is full power. If you go beyond that, you could damage the amplifier and your speakers as well. The only reason it does go over 0 dB is in case you've got a very, very quiet signal. Here in the HDMI menu here you can set up whether you're going to use Hdmi Control, so that allows you to control different components down HDMI. In practice I find that doesn't work very well, but so I generally leave it turned off. I've only ever seen it work on one brand's equipment across their whole range, where you turn the amplifier on, it turns your TV on automatically and that sort of thing. Other than that, it doesn't tend to work. You can set it to pass through audio as well in standby and HDMI standby. Here's an auto standby feature as well. It'll turn itself off if it doesn't detect a signal. You've got the network settings where you can manually specify an IP address. That can overcome some problems with networking, or it will pick one up automatically if you're running a DHCP server. So you can return it there back to its factory defaults as well. Here's the remote settings where you, if you've got more than one of these in the same room, I suppose you may have somewhere where you've got multiple rooms and you've got each of the amps in one room. You can assign them different remote IDs. Here's where you can control how you have the remote set up to control the different makes of equipment, so you can have it controlling, say, a Panasonic television or something like that. And here you can lock the setup so no one can fiddle with any of these settings once you've set them up. Now it's got some on-screen menus as well, which are sort of cut down menus to show you what's going on. So it shows you what inputs are, what connections are assigned to each input. So here you can see that you've got component and coaxial, and it gives you a little preview of what's going on that input as well. So you can see you're getting a signal, or if you want to actually change over. It's quite neat, but for me it's not necessarily a killer feature. It's just a useful little thing. You can change basic things like the bass and treble, the subwoofer level. That's quite useful having that to hand, because it's something you quite often want to change and move around if you feel the sub's too low or too high. Depending quite a lot from film to film, it can sound radically different. can change the picture mode as well, and you can also just get it to show you, what's going on information wise. There's the picture mode as well there. You can see you can change the brightness and contrast, the same sort of thing you do in the main menus, but here very much cut down so it's not interfering with the screen. Here's the information menu, shows you what's coming in, what signal, what frequency it's at, what input. Quite good. It's got a level of detail. A lot of amps don't tell you that. It's quite useful to know, especially if you're trying to work out if there's something maybe not connected up right. You can do that. And what listening mode it's in. It's got quite a few different ones, a few different music ones, a few different movie ones. It's got 3 different stereo ones. You can have it different. If you have it in pure direct, for instance, it turns the subwoofer off. If you have it in straight stereo, then it turns the subwoofer on. So it's quite good in that respect. If you just want to listen to music through your main speakers, you've got good floor standing speakers, you can do it that way. It's also where you go to set if you want to update the firmware. Like I was saying earlier, they do regular ones. It is worth doing because it sometimes does cure any little bugs there might be in the software. But it's very important when you do it. I would do it over an Ethernet connection, not over Wi-Fi. It's also very important you don't turn it off while it's doing it, because that could actually kill the unit. Now onto the Odyssey XT32 setup. You've got a few different things here that you tell it what you're doing, whether you're using the digital crossover or whether you're using it in biamp mode. You can set that up at the start of the Odyssey setup. When you plug the microphone into the front, the menu automatically comes up for Odyssey. You set it up in the same way. You tell it which inputs, which outputs rather you're using, which speaker connections are connected, and what use that you're putting them to, and then off it goes. It starts measuring the sub first of all, and you have to set the level on your actual subwoofer to the level it wants. When it gets there, you then can go forward to the full XT32 calibration. So you want it roughly at where you'd normally be listening to it, and then it will go through systematically. We've cut it down a bit, but it will go through each speaker and do a series of test tones measuring the distance, the phase, the level, the different characteristics of the speaker to equalize it. It will do all those things automatically using that setup microphone. We don't actually use it here. We like to manually set up, but we know the room we have it set up in very well, and we know the different speakers, the sounds of those very well. So it's a bit easier for us than it is for you. We always recommend with people that it's worth giving it a try. See how you get on with Odyssey. XT32 is the best one that they've brought out so far. It gets the best job of doing it. But personally, I like to do it manually, and I don't like having things equalized. But if you're going to do it, this is one of the best ones on the market, to do it with. Now onto the networking. One of the nice things about the Onkyo is you don't have to be using DLNA. They've got this home media function. This is the main menu you go into, and you can actually customize it. You can move the things around that you use the most and clump them all together. So if you're not using Spotify, you can move that to the end. And you browse the different folders. This is the home media function, so these can just be shared drives. It doesn't need to be DLNA at all. It can just be a NAS drive that doesn't support DLNA, or a computer with a shared folder, and you can just browse them. And if you've got them well laid out, so here you can see we've got all our music stored by artist. It makes it fairly easy to browse. It's not really that much better, but of course what you won't get is genre information, that sort of thing like that you do get with DLNA, tag information. But if you just want to go to some music and play it, it will do it, and it will do it very quickly and efficiently. And it'll play things like WAV files that not all DLNA servers will serve up correctly. And certainly you can't browse, because there's no tag information. You can't browse them by artist or anything like that. So quite a neat feature. It saves all the fuss of DLNA, and for me it's something that would make me swing towards buying the Onkyo if I was thinking of doing media playback. It's also the only way you can play back a DSD file over the network as well, because the DLNA servers that we've got here don't support DSD files, so you can do that too. And here's the DLNA function, pretty similar. You can see what's going on here on the front display as well. We've put that up for you, and you can see the it's repeated what's on the front display. So you could have your television turned off, and you don't have to be looking at television to just listen to some music. You can just browse through. It's only a single line, but it's fairly straightforward, and you can get to what you want to play, and it will just start playing. It's pretty quick as well. We found it's some of them are a bit slow to go through, but the Onkyo's interface is pretty speedy, and even when you click on it, you see there it starts up fairly quick to start playing a song. It also will bring up album art across if it's correctly stored on the DLNA device. Not all DLNA servers will serve it up correctly, unfortunately. And you can see here it's running at a very high bit rate. This is FLAC, and it's 24-bit, 192 kilohertz, which it will also show you on the front display if you hit the display button. So here's the feature of the home media where you just go through and just pick what you want to play. And again, you can just do it on the front panel. But we can show you here the Dsd Playback. It's a unique kind of thing that it does, fairly unique. There's only one other make that actually supporting Dsd Playback, and I don't think it does it across the network. I think it only does it from a USB stick. The Onkyo will do both, and it will play back. As you can see here, we've got a copied SACD, and it will play back the raw DSD files. It won't play back an ISO image, and it won't play back 5.1. It'll attempt to play back a 5.1 multi-channel, but it doesn't work. It's inaudible. You get lots of noise, and you can see that DSD 1-bit. It's playing it back. You can see it on the display. It even shows you what the sample rate is as well. So this is the Android Control application, and it's very similar looking to the Apple one, and it lets you do a lot of the basic functions of controlling the amp, changing input, changing the volume. It's very handy if you want to have a second zone or third zone, because you can use this as the second and third zone remote anywhere in the house and control it, which is very useful. And all you need to do is just get the Onkyo onto the network, install this application on your device, on an Android device. We've installed it here. And it should find the amp, and away it goes and controls it. You can change the volume, input, switch it on and off, and it could do more. I mean, we use it on a sort of 9.5-inch or whatever tablet, and it's clearly been designed for a phone. And I think a lot of the people who are going to be using it will have a tablet, so it's a shame there isn't a second version of it that does more, has more of the controls on one page. You find yourself endlessly going through things, but it is still, very useful considering they provide for free. And here you can see you can go through the internet radio and listen to different internet radio stations, and it brings up a little logo of the station as well there. And you can use it as well for the DLNA, which is quite neat because it makes browsing it quite straightforward. And you don't need to look at the amp. You don't need the television on. You can just do all this from your device and choose what you want to listen to. Again, you could have the entire album on there, but because it's designed for a phone, they've not done that, and it's because it's designed for a touchscreen as well. They bring up the album art too, which is quite neat. Normally takes a few seconds for it to do that after it started playing. But the other neat feature of this is that it actually will play the music directly back from, only on Android anyway, and I believe they've updated it now for the Apple device as well. If you've got music stored on the Android device itself, it creates a little DLNA server and pushes the music to the amp directly, so you don't need any third-party thing. Away you go. Here's what's inside the box. Here's the accessories you get. This is the remote control. This will function as the zone 1 or zone 2 or 3, but of course it needs to be in range of it. so really it's only ever going to be used for the zone 1 or to program up another remote control. You get the mains lead, you get the Odyssey setup microphone, some batteries for the remote, AM and FM basic sort of aerials, and all these neat little stickers you can put on the speakers to help identify what they are if you have to unplug it. The instruction manual now comes on a CD-ROM and a very basic setup quick start guide. So, pros and cons of the Onkyo TXNR3010. Well, it's got fantastic build quality, as have all the amps in their range, and you know, it's very heavy to move around. Sound quality wise, it's an improvement on the lower models. It's got a little bit more power. Feature wise, they do so well at the lower end, there isn't really much you know, more in the way of features, but you can do full 11.2, which it has got those 9 amps, so if that's important for you or you're using multi-zone, good reason to step up to this model. Now they're doing this in the lower model with the extra transformers and just the more slightly better components that are inside it does give you just a little bit better sound quality over that lower model, not just the 9 channels, so you know there is a step up. However, on the con side is that there is the next model up, the TX-NR3010, and that has much improved sound quality because it has a much better toroidal transformer and it has better connections on the back. And the price difference between this and the 5010 isn't so great. So, you know, for me, it's not a bad buy, the 3010. But I would seriously consider, if you're going to this length anyway, spending this much money, spending that little bit more extra and getting the 5010. Other sad thing, you know, is that it doesn't have the multi-channel DSD, but we can't moan too much because that's a feature that's very new. And you know, on the pro side, it's great that it does do that it can play back, you know, ripped SACD files, and also across the network, which we believe at the moment is unique. It's the only thing that does that. So, all round, very good. Its sound quality is detailed, it's warm, it hasn't got a bright sound like a lot of AV amps have got, and an improvement on last year's model as well. Onkyo are very good at this. They do manage to get a little bit more out each year from each of their amps, and do make it worth. Certainly if you've got one that's a few years old now, Onkyo wise, you know, you will notice the difference upgrading to something like the 3010.
That's the end of our review of the Onkyo TXNR3010. If you've enjoyed watching this video, there are more on our website and our YouTube feed. If you'd like to order this receiver, please visit our website avland.co.uk. You'll also find out more information there on the 3010 receiver. Thank you for watching.